And in fact, it's part of the Muslim ethos that begging as a permanent condition of life is something that is very much looked down upon. To beg for yourself, and in particular, begging so that you can give money to the poor, as in the Sufi tradition, is actually encouraged. It suggests that God simply cannot provide for his servants in a more honourable fashion. So by begging, you are somehow insulting God. And there's a famous hadith in which the Prophet said, "It's better that one of you should take a rope and go to the mountains and return with a load of firewood on his back, which he then sells to become self-sufficient, than that he should beg from others." So implicit in this is the next of the great spiritual virtues of Islam. Again, a Quranic virtue which is known in Arabic as tawakkul, which means reliance upon God. It's a nuanced principle. Dr. Muir yesterday reminded us of the hadith in which the Blessed Prophet told people to tie up your camels, then rely on God. And it excludes any idea of lazily giving up one's worldly responsibilities on the argument that God will provide. In fact, one of the divine names is Ar-Razzaq, the provider. And the Quran gives the story of Abraham, who was saved from Nimrod's furnace simply because he trusted in divine providence. Nonetheless, although we find occasionally early Muslim mystics wandering in the deserts, for instance, wrapped in the love of God, and confident that God will preserve them from the wild beasts, the lions and so forth, that lurked in the deserts at that time, nonetheless, this was ultimately regarded as an eccentric, non-mainstream form of piety. Didn't represent the usual Muslim understanding of tawakkul. So we find, again, Junayd saying, I should write his name down because he's one of the great figures in the development of Muslim mysticism. Junayd of Baghdad, 3rd century. Junayd said, "The proper method of earning a living is to engage in one's activities in the same spirit as with works of optional religious devotion, not with the idea that they are a means of sustenance or advantage. God is going to provide for you. Nonetheless, he has commanded you to work for a living, to live honourably, to provide for your dependents and so forth. And this is in fact a form of worship. And very often we find even quite simple and almost apparently profane crafts in the traditional world become formalized as guilds, and those guilds themselves exist as spiritual orders in themselves with their own traditions of prayer, their own wirds and so forth. The guilds in particular in the Muslim world essentially were religious orders. Closely related to this virtue of tawakkul is another Quranic virtue of sabr, which means patient endurance, steadfastness, displayed in the Quran, for instance, in the accounts of the lives of Job and of Jacob. The Quran says, "Give good news to the patient who say when a misfortune strikes them, truly we are God's, and truly unto him we shall return." And as one early mystic said, sabr is to remain unmoved before the arrows of the divine decrees. Whatever comes, you accept it with equanimity and with endurance and steadfastness, because you know that whatever comes to you is from God. We're coming to an end of this, and as I forewarned, there is more to this subject than can be squeezed into a couple of hours.